Executive Director of the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute, and I wanted to welcome everybody here to our Innovation Week. I had nothing to do with the planning, and that's probably why it looks so wonderful to me. And anyway, it's time to get started. And I wanted to introduce our first panel and our first moderator. And she's a former Reynolds Fellow, and she works at KOMU right now. And her name's Jen Reeves. So
hello.
Take it away, Jen, before I get started.
Thanks. All right. Are we on? Oh, hold on. We're really on. We were sort of on. Now we're back to sort of. Can you hear me? All right, good. Hi. So, hey, I'm Jen Reeves. I am an associate professor here at Missouri School of Journalism. I am the interactive director at KOMU TV and .com. Interactive director is a name we made up because what we're doing is a little different in most places. I'd also love to introduce, we have a wide-ranging panel here. This is a panel you wouldn't normally find, but at RJI it just makes sense. We have some folks who are here, and we have some folks who are in a Google Hangouts. So it's a panel from multiple countries and multiple spaces. So with me in person is Amy Wood. She's known as TV Amy on the Twitter. She's also a regular broadcaster as well, but I know her best as TV Amy. And she's a pioneer when it comes to bringing social to broadcast. She was doing it on air and behind the scenes before pretty much most people in broadcast. You know, she was doing it before you even thought about it. So that's pretty cool. And Stacey Wobel is the news director over at KOMU. He joins us as well. He is he has so much in the history of broadcast, and he has been an incredible leader while we get to innovate at the KOMU newsroom. I'm going to also let the Hangout introduce themselves, those of you who are there. You guys want to say hello? Sure.
Hey gang, my name's Sarah Hill. I'm from KOMU TV. I am actually on the set right now because we are doing cut-ins for our noon newscast, which starts today. So I will be muting myself and working as we speak. But this is the perspective that you see from our on-air hangout. We are doing the news this way, and then we are talking with our viewers this way as well. And throughout the course of this discussion, you'll have news anchors popping in and out as their cut-ins ebb and flow today. They're going to be joining us as they're able as far as feeding the news beast. And I will kick it over to Stephanie Cruz, if you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about maybe how you're using Hangouts as well.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning from where I am. My name is Stephanie Cruz. I'm a news anchor with the Fox affiliate in Sacramento. I've gotten a lot of help from Sarah and Mike with the Hangouts and integrating them into our newscast. And we have a segment called Viewer's Voice where we pose a question of the day. And so what I do is I'll post that in the stream and allow people to come in for a half hour, and we record it. Use those Hangouts in our Viewer's Voice. We used to solely use Facebook, but now we're using Google Plus a lot more, and we're doing it in 2 or 3 newscasts. Our 10 p.m., our 5:30, and our 6 o'clock newscast. So it's been a great tool for us to get feedback on Google Plus.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. I'm Mike Downs, coming to you from England on British flag, English flag on St George's Day, which is nice. First met Sarah and KOMU in September last year, so now I work as a bit of a co-host and from all over the news sets in the US, really, as well as the UK and Europe. Short for me today.
And Jen, if you can enable the chat just so that they're able to see that, that would be great.
Sure.
And Steve Garfield, I see that you are watching online. I am inviting you now.
We've been doing this morning, Sarah. Steve.
If you're able to join, hop on in and join our discussion here.
Definitely. So what we're showing you is just what we're trying to do is bring social, which has been a back channel for a very long time in, well, just the journalism industry as a whole. But what we've been able to do is we are bringing social to a traditional broadcast setting. And we're doing it, we're trying to find the right balance between new and what our viewers want. And it's a very interesting challenge that we're learning. And what is really wonderful about this environment is that we do get to keep learning. And so what we wanted to talk about today is how social and how new tools are blending and changing the industry. And Amy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how new tools have changed your work as journalists.
Well, I think, a lot of us have talked, Sarah and I talk sometimes on Twitter or through Google+. Many of the journalists, like Steve Garfield, who's following us on Twitter now on Google+ today, a lot of conversations going on about what we're doing, which is engaging our customer, our audience, our users. And that the experience of actually doing that live in a broadcast, whether you were doing it through this amazing two-way video chat or whether you're doing it through the one-way live stream or even through a chat, even a text chat can still be powerful. But that experience of anchoring and seeing audience reaction, almost having your own little mini focus group and feedback machine right in the room with you is really powerful because as a journalist, it enables you to sort of get a better feel for the stories they care about. It opens up this channel of communication to, like Sarah and I have talked about, getting corrected. Your audience will be like, wait a minute, you said this and it's really this. I mean, we get amazing tips that are flowing in live in a broadcast that the viewer then suddenly is experiencing the journalism process because they go, why didn't you just say that tip on TV? Well, because we have to actually check the facts, and they start to learn about how it works and what's powerful about what we do. And frankly, in this age of everybody blogging, everybody posting, everybody putting stuff out there, I think it's a very important time for us to be really transparent and bringing people into our process because I think they will start to see the value in true journalism when they understand what we actually do. So I think that there's just a lot of benefit to it, but most importantly, I mean, even just as an anchor person, I've anchored for 25-ish, don't say that out loud, years, and I have never felt more engaged, connected, and into what I do than when I do, for example, a live stream during a broadcast. I mean, traditionally I've done live streaming during my 10 o'clock show, and my other shows are not streamed, and I feel more connected and engaged in that 10 o'clock process than I do in the other shows. I still feel engaged in the others, but it's just there's something different about that experience as an anchor. It's awesome.
It's essentially, I was just going to say, it's almost like having an omniscient narrator, if you will, in your ear, in that you have your producer in one side, but yet you have the hangout in the other. So when you're reading the news stories, you're hearing automatically in real time the audience's reaction. So no longer do you do a news story and then go back to the newsroom or check your social media and see what people have texted you about how they feel. You are hearing their reaction in real time, able to talk with them during the sound bites and commercials. Stephanie Cruz has experienced this as well. And maybe Stephanie, you can talk a little bit about what that is like to have real-time feedback and to have essentially people sitting there right there with you, seeing behind the scenes of a newscast, warts and all. When our batteries go dead on our microphones, or we might ask someone how you pronounce them. Do you think that makes a news organization more transparent, Stephanie?
I do, and I think that viewers want that. And I look at it as this is two-way journalism now. It used to be one direction where we would give people the news, that's it. We read it, they get it on one side, and then you turn it, you flip it around, and they can see it from our perspective. And they love that. And I've been working in TV for 15, 16 years, and people are, I still can't believe people are fascinated coming in, visiting, and seeing the process. This allows them to come in without actually coming in to the station. So it's been great in that respect. We've been able to go to the Weather Center from their home, sitting and they're watching that process, and then go inside. And sometimes I'll bring the iPad into the news director's office or into the evening meetings, the editorial meetings, and people love that, to see the process.
Speaking of news directors,
right,
is a manager of this. Stacey, why are you letting these things happen?
Well, I'll start out, and maybe I'll contradict what a couple of other people will say. Television has never been completely one way. There was a way for people to call back. My father used to be the guy that, when I was a kid, he used to call the TV station and complain. And when I became a news director, I said to him, I'm the guy who gets those calls now, the ones you used to make. But it was a very slow process that people could call or write a letter and do that. So we've accelerated the feedback. There's always some feedback. We've accelerated it right there. And I think that's the interesting part, because as Sarah said, I think maybe you could compare it to an actor working on stage versus working in a studio to shoot a television show. On stage, you can feel the audience react. If you're a musician or a performer of some sort, you get to feel the audience react. And so these guys get to do that now, and that gives us a chance to move much more quickly, which is what we do in news now than we used to. There's no longer 2 or 3 newscasts a day. There's 5 or 6, plus the continuous updating of the web and mobile and social media. So it fits with what we're trying to do in terms of delivering our product, and so we get that feedback back. The interesting part, and maybe you're ready to explore that way, is who's reacting and who's feeding back and who we get. I think if you think back to, if you're old enough to think about bulletin board days on the internet or things like that, there are what are called lurkers, people who like to read but don't like to participate. And so I think we're much at that stage. There are people who will watch this, but the people who participate are a much smaller number.
Right, and we've had some really magical social media interactive moments in our broadcast experience in this market. We had a snowstorm that was the coolest snowstorm in the world because nobody died. It was not an ice storm, so everybody still had power. They had their cameras, they had their broadband, and they had their TVs on. And their multiple screen experience with us was fun. And we had such an amazing experience of sharing and talking, and it was very live and happening. And I realized this could happen. We can do this in the market. But the folks who want to engage right now are consumers who will do a multiple screen experience in times of need. Breaking news is not, these are not the always watching TV folks. They're the folks that are getting news from us on our different platforms. We need to find ways to want to bring them in, and they want to interact with us all the time in broadcast. They're not those everyday viewers at this point. I personally think we can't ignore the multiple platform consumer, because if we just focused on those that are watching, we're gonna not always have people who are just watchers. Yeah. So it's a bit of a, well, we're learning, and I think we are in an amazing time to be able to be here and we're talking and just like, I don't know everything yet, but we're going to keep trying. And Sarah, what do you want to talk a little bit about how we're trying to learn pretty much live on the air starting at noon today?
Essentially it is a traditional newscast, but it has a layer of interactivity in it. That was not a Freudian slip there. Interactivity in it that will have Hangouts. It'll also have social media comments as bumps as well, and some of our other interactive layer. But I wanted to see if I can bring in Mike Downs just to share a little bit about from what the other side, the other perspective, that global perspective is. Mike has been sharing his expertise with newscasters around the world, from France, all over, and hopping from Hangout and gleaning information about how this process works. Can you share a little bit about what that's like on the other side of the Hangout, having the ability to contribute to a news conversation, and how you see some other news organizations might be using this space in the future?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Can you see me okay? I've just done a screen share. Yeah, I'm there, aren't I? I think that Sarah Hill's done it certainly in one way, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Fox 11 down in LA are using this celeb interview things, and I'm quite excited because I might be meeting Maria Bello later on. Sorry, that's my plug out of the way. And then it depends how it works. So in other words, we've got meteorologists coming on board, we've got celebs, we've got news orgs, we've got other people that certainly with the choice that I've got, I can just absolutely float around all over the place. So if I can stay up late enough for the Pacific time, meet people like Stephanie, then that's great when we can do some pre-records. And then I've been showing other anchors how to do some promos to get the most out of the Google Plus stream. And then there's another guy down in Florida called Brad Panovich, and he makes the most amazing weathercasting YouTubes. and they're so colourful. Then we go over to, and it's a fantastic thing for me in the UK because I can hang out with people from India, and they normally do their hangouts really early in the morning. And it is just the noisiest, most background feedback things you've ever heard, but they just persist and they keep going. And then you've got somebody who really wants to do well, like France 24, and I think we've just had a fantastic one, which I absolutely loved. One of my best ever was in Argentina, where the whole tiny bit of this news show consisted of a webcam outside in the street with a quiz show, and then every time it was a yes or a no, the light kept flashing on behind the curtains and things, and that's why I keep going, because of just the choice and the variety that I'm just inspired and motivated by it.
Montreal, a Montreal station just did one recently for Earth Day as well. So stations more and more are essentially using this as a free satellite truck, if you will, in the middle of a crowdsourcing tool. So not only are we using it to connect with viewers behind the scenes of the newscast, and also on the air as well by bringing in people live to do interviews, but you have the ability to find individuals in the aftermath of a breaking news event that's far off in Norway or in Pakistan or something like that. We have the ability, through the globality of this Google Plus platform, not only to interview them, but to find these individuals. And what this is essentially what's called a virtual front porch. And newscasters are turning the lights on their virtual front porches, and they are hanging out with the public, having listening sessions, if you will, not only just for them to give the news, but for them to hear what other people think is news. And I think that's, one of the best uses for it is not maybe even necessarily putting on the air, but using it as a magic carpet, if you will, to scoot from conversation to conversation around your town or around your world and just connect and listen to viewers.
This is true. So we are almost 22 minutes into sharing and talking about this. I want to periodically check in with the group and see if you have any questions. We happen to have members of Gen Class, the hashtag on Twitter, in here as well. Yeah.
We have a question from online. It says, how has social changed the product you deliver to your audience?
Who wants to start?
I can probably start with that. It would depend on what audience the person's speaking of, but I'll talk about on-air audiences. That's my main consideration. We started the U-News program last September. Jen mentioned the snowstorm. That was February of last year, and that was where we started thinking about how we could really use this sort of technology. But we didn't have Google Plus yet. We didn't have a lot of the hardware that the station has now to use, but we set out to putting that together. And so Sarah started using Hangouts on the 5 o'clock show that she anchors last summer, and then the U-News program started in September. And we set out, we were replacing the Oprah Winfrey show, so we had an hour open at 4 o'clock, and we set out to build a completely new newscast to go into that time frame. So U-News started as an hour there at 4 o'clock. And frankly, in its first few months, we had ratings information in November, and the ratings weren't very good. They were fairly low, and we ended up moving the show to 11 a.m. in a half-hour format, try to come out of the Today Show and catch a news audience there. And probably did a little bit better, but still reasonably disappointing ratings. And I think part of it, and I think it gets to the question that maybe the person asked here is, what are people looking for in television news, and how can we deliver it in a way that they will accept it? I mean, we were talking before we started, and TV news is so much alike everywhere you go. It's sort of this McDonald'sification of news, that you can buy a McDonald's hamburger in Newark or Los Angeles and it tastes the same, and so does the newscast that you look at both places. They're very, very similar. So we put on, with U-News, something that looked completely different, and by design we even changed the graphics so that they were different color and a different look, different music, everything what we were doing. And I think in hindsight, which is always 2020, that maybe we changed too much, and that it was a little bit hard to get people to accept something that was that different. Maybe they would have liked it if they'd given it a chance, but I think they were a little turned off by the fact that it didn't look like what they feel like a news show is like. So it's coincidental that today Sarah talked about the new show at noon. We're taking really the content, the ideas of U-News, putting it into a program at noon that we're going to call KWU News at Noon. Not a very original title, but again, that's sort of my point here. We're going to put some sugar with that medicine and see if people won't accept it like that. So it's going to look much more like a traditional newscast, but Sarah will still get a chance to do a lot of the interactivity that she's developed over the past few months on News.
It walks like a duck.
What did you say? It walks like a duck. It walks like a duck.
I think
It's not necessarily duck.
Sarah, some of the dichotomy of the situation is that you can't please the TV and the online audience necessarily on television. I think in some ways we've kind of learned that process too. We've stepped back a little bit from as much comments on air in our show, and we're trying to kind of keep maybe the interactive side going on the side as sort of this complement. You know, we've got the second screen viewing phenomenon going on, and surely to God, it's working really well for the entertainment industry because they're hashtagging every primetime show you watch, and you know, you can see that people are realizing, yeah, people are sitting there with their mobile device or their iPad on a couch or on the bedside table, and they are ready to engage with some things, and it logically makes sense that in the evenings, especially when you hit 10 and 11 o'clock news, there could be a place for allowing a second screen experience to exist for news shows. And I think that's kind of where we're in this murky water where we're trying to figure out what's going to be the best way to do this. And I just hope that there aren't people that, you know, get the, oh, we don't want to see comments on TV message and say, well, then throw the baby out with the bathwater and let's get rid of it all. Because I think it's this balance we're going to have to find and you know, meander and experiment our way through to get to a place where we find that balance that works, where there's a little acknowledgement that you have this online thing going on. But, you know, Sarah and I were talking last night at dinner, you know, we, old anchors especially like me, when you go back to your traditional anchor coaching, they always told you when you're on your free shot, make sure you don't leave the audience out and talk to this guy over here. You don't, you know, you want to make sure you're always including your audience and kind of keeping that arm, this right-hand arm open to have them in this show with you. And there is that problem in television with when you're throwing up all these comments and things, it makes some logical sense that people are going, well, I'm not part of that. I feel left out. And yes.
To interrupt, the comments on TV is the perfect example of what we're talking about because people, all the researchers say we don't like hearing social media comments on TV, and in fact, TV News has done comments on TV since Eisenhower was president. They're called man-on-the-street interviews. You go stick a camera in somebody's face and somebody gives you a sentence about what they think and you put it on TV and everybody accepts that because it's the convention. But you give them the exact same thing with the little Facebook or Twitter logo on it. Ooh, I don't like that.
So we just had Steve Garfield appear in
Good
our
morning,
Hangouts.
Missouri. I'm Sarah Hill, and here's a look at your local headlines. The first official weigh-in for Canada's new Smithtown program took place this morning. It's 12 weeks.
That is the
Thank you, Mike.
skill that you learned.
So Steve, we'll let you. I love
I won't
multimedia.
give Sarah the morning off to participate.
So Steve, I'd love for you to tell folks about you and what you're doing online. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, hey everybody. So I'm Steve Garfield from stevegarfield.com. You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
So basically I started video blogging January 1st of 2004 before there was video blogging. So I was experimenting with how to even just put video on blogs way back then. And that led me to writing my book, Get Seen, which talks about really helping people to easily put video online. And right now, what I've been doing is experimenting with interacting with broadcasts. And last year, I did a year's worth of shows on the Pulse Network, and that was an online network. And I did a show all about this environment. I was experimenting with how the viewers could interact with me in real time, and that led to me at the end of the show starting to get involved with looking at Google Hangouts.
Which is a lot of fun. We also have Maria who just, oh hey, Shaka's there too. Hey guys, you want to introduce yourselves as well?
Yeah, hi, it's Maria Quaban from the Fox 11 newsroom here in Los Angeles.
And I'm Shaka Armstrong, also in the Fox 11 newsroom
Shaka
here in
is
Los
our
Angeles.
tech ninja here and does everything and everything on camera, off camera here at Fox 11.
So if you guys, I was just going to say, talk a little bit about what you guys are doing with celebrities behind the scenes and how you are using this space.
You know, Shaka and I were just talking about that because he was off all week last week. So I was catching him up on how the week was last week. And what we do is we have a regular show. It's called Good Day LA. It's on the set, and that's broadcast out on Fox 11. And then what we do here on the social desk with me is we get to talk to celebrities, race car drivers, authors, anyone and everyone. And it's such a different feel to have them sit here with me because I sit on the other side as well, and that's more of a formal interview. But here on the social desk, we have an on-air hangout. We broadcast to everyone on the web, but they just instantly have this different demeanor when they come and sit down here. It's very casual, very informal. They have fun. They love interacting.
We have to make some celebs get up. Ice Cube told his people that he would not. They were like, okay, it's time to go. He was like, nah. You down there, you had a question, you go ahead. You would not get up. It was great.
They just love it because it's so not what they're used to, and they love interacting with everyone in the hangout. And I learn something from the hangout every day, and we really do have a good time. We really do.
Are you taking anything that you're doing in the hangouts and sharing them on there, or is it completely an online experience?
You know, we've taken a couple of opportunities to share them on air, but that's still in the pipeline. I think we're still trying to find the marriage, the equipment of that. So very soon to be integrated more full time. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, there are just some things with the webcam, and I think with the clarity, with the final product, the archive product, if you will, that I think have to be kind of ironed out so that we can, you know, just have a nicer looking finished product when we actually put it on the air.
I've got a question for Stacy that Stacy might be able to answer. But, you know, a lot of pushback from stations, or maybe Stephanie or Shaka, I'm not sure you all might be getting this as well, but, you know, why should a news organization show the guts of their endeavor? And that why would you want to bring viewers behind the scenes of the newscast? Because wouldn't they see your warts? So maybe, you know, Stacy, or does anybody else want to take that about why we would want to bring viewers right up next to us?
We'll start with Stacy.
I'll start off. I think, and it's my opinion, but I think it makes some sense as you think about it, that the news media have never been under as much attack for bias and laziness and kind of figuring out our story before we go to cover it. All the negative things you hear about the media now, and television is often in the sights first on that. And so the notion of transparency, which is not new to this phenomenon, we've been talking transparency for a decade or more, but to let people see what you do and to talk openly about it, you probably do that, and I know Sarah does as we go through, to let people know this is a little bit of the process, that, you know, as you say, the information came in, it's a tip, why didn't you say it right away? Well, we have to check it out. Or to let people know if we make a mistake or stumble in some way, how that is. We've done a segment not related with UNews. We've done a segment for, what, Kent, 4 years now, 5 years now, called Your View, that gives us a chance to, it's the old viewer mailbag concept, and gives us a chance to sort of to air those things. And so it's another step toward transparency. So I think it's a good defensive mechanism to say that all the bad things that you think about us, if you get a chance to hear how we work and hear us respond to that, you might understand a little bit better. And any news manager who's had a complaint on the phone where somebody comes in really hot about how horrible we are for whatever reason, most of us are able to get to the end of those phone calls and let people, they leave satisfied most of the time that we actually made some intelligent decisions that may not have been what they wanted, but at least there was some cogitation going on that led them to that point. And so that's one caller. This way we get to do it with large groups of people, which is more efficient, if nothing else.
Shaka, you wanted to put in some...
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a branding perspective, it personalizes, it humanizes the on-camera talent, because a lot of times people tend to look at the box of television, look at that window, and there's a disconnect between the audience and the talent. And they kind of put the talent on a pedestal. But one of the things we've seen and heard from people who've hung out is, hey, you're just a regular person. Hey, you're really cool. Hey, I like you. these types of things. So from a branding perspective, it really allows you to tear down that fourth wall and connect with your audience, connect with the viewers, and just kind of make this more intimate relationship, beyond just the screen, the gloss of the plasma or LCD, whatever you may be watching at home.
So I've opened up the Hangout during our 6 p.m. newscast, and I'll place the iPad on the news, our news podium. We've had some disastrous newscasts. It's a fairly new show. And people, I've had some Jessica Savage moments, and people get to see that during the newscast when everything's falling apart, and they love that. They love that.
Yeah, they do.
It's like a train wreck. People come back, and so we have a tradition now that if we have a great newscast, one of the editors who dances, does a dance in our 5 minutes, with 5 minutes left in the show. If it's been a bad newscast, no dance. And people come to see that dance. So they have fun. We've had fun with that.
Can I just echo something that Stephanie is saying? Is I think I've taken a bit more of a backseat of more of a production role. And there was one day where we turned up and Stephanie had to do this recording, and it's not her fault. And it was like a promo thing, and there was about 5 people in there, and a few black screens, a few echoes, a few people who get their mics working. And as the time was running out, Stephanie was just going absolutely mad, but had a real calm nature about her. Do you remember that day, Steph?
Yeah, oh yeah, I do.
Nightmares.
People like that. People like that. It's not perfect TV, and it's like people don't want to see. It's like sausage being made. You don't want to see that, but you get to do that in the Hangout, and I think people enjoy that.
Mm.
I think Steve has an interesting perspective because you've always been non-traditional. What is your thought about more traditional, finding ways to bring it into your space?
Bringing.
Well, this is a space that you've been, you're very naturally, in the non-traditional. What do you think about traditional coming in?
Well, I love it. I would like to see traditional become more non-traditional. In Boston, we had a few years ago on election night, one of the stations, they have a station that's on, it's on another station too, so they have 2 broadcasts, and on the secondary broadcast they were a lot more casual, and they had computers in front of them, and they were reading the chat room comments about the election results as they came in, and they said, oh hey, here's Steve Garfield, and he says this thing, and then he says, oh, and this other guy, Charles, he thinks this. So it really made us totally a part of that broadcast. And then a couple years later, I was at a conference sitting down, and the guy beside me says, he introduces himself, he says, hey, I'm Charles. We were both in that chat on election night, and we got to meet each other. Another quick story is someone who's doing a really good job at this kind of thing is Leo Laporte in his Twit Live broadcast, and he's just an expert. So I was on a show with Callie Lewis at Blog World Expo. I was walking through the expo floor, and Callie Lewis was live, and she said, hey, it's Steve Garfield. Steve, come here, come on the show. And it was live, and I just love that kind of stuff. So I joined the panel, and Sarah Lane from Leo Laporte's show was there with me on the panel. And I said, oh, Sarah, it's so great to meet you in person. And she looks at me and she says, we've already met in person. All the people who were live there went, whoa. And so I let it sit. And then about 5 minutes later, Sarah Lane looks over at me and she said, you know what? We've never met in person. We actually met on a Google Hangout for this Apple rollout. And I felt in my mind like we had been sitting across the dinner table. I felt like I already met you in person when I actually hadn't. And that's a thing from video blogging days, that when you meet someone after seeing them on video, you really feel that you know them. And that's, the power of online video, and that's what, I talk about all the time. And some people, still don't realize it, but it's so powerful.
Well, I think, too, let me jump in here, that you'll hear people in the industry say, wow, you're only getting 20, 30, 40 people in this particular moment of a live stream or a Google Hangout or whatever. And I would argue, don't be discouraged by small numbers, because the power of those engagements with a small group of people, Google Hangouts limit you to 10, but that 10-person exchange that's going on there is extremely powerful. And the best example of that, it was a blog that was recently done about Taylor Swift and what she does with concerts. She, in her last concert tour, had her team go around and find the biggest brand advocates. In other words, these people that were just totally dressed up like her, totally into her, the most spirited fans, rabid fans, if you want to call them, and she pulls them in at the end of the show and brings, just a handful of them in for this special one-on-one party with Taylor after the show. And there are a lot of people in the industry who've asked her, why do you got 50,000, 100,000 people at a concert, you sell out in 2 minutes, why do you spend this kind of time and give this special access to such a small group of people? Well, what happens is she sees what happens in the community where they go out and brand advocate, they become the biggest brand advocates and screamers ever for her. And I have an example of that. We did stealth research in our market, recently, and we didn't know, we anchors didn't know, but in the process of them doing the research, when you have enough of a following, somebody's going to get the phone call, and so, viewers start calling me going, hey, I just spent half an hour on, and the interesting thing about that was they said, I just said how much I love you, and the whole station, and the whole, in other words, there's some concern that anchors or people in television news can become so popular that it's, you worry about the brand. Like, well, wait a minute, we need to have the station having as many followers as the person. But the bleed over of successful brand advocates to the brand is very apparent and clear, and it is something that I don't think we need to worry about in terms of competition. I think if you can have successful brand advocates, Sarah has talked about we the anchors, the faces of stations, become portals to our content, then that's a good thing. It's not something to be afraid of. And I think those little exchanges we're having, as small and as sort of minute as they might seem, are powerful game changers.
Definitely. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, somebody out there needs to study that level of interaction of a text-based engagement on maybe another social network versus a video engagement, and whether or not that connection is deeper. Anecdotal evidence tells me that it is. I don't know if any of my fellow news anchors would agree with that, but somebody out there needs to study the level of engagement. If the fact that we are seeing each other face to face means that we are connecting on a more deeper level.
And I met you in person, Steve Garfield, too. I just wanted to say that. At Blog World Expo in 2009 or 2010, I actually met you. So I'm just throwing that out there. It was actually not in a video chat or hangout. So
you know what? When people said that they like you, I knew I liked you, and I thought I might have met you before.
Yeah. So.
All right, so we have a group of students in this room who are about to go out into the industry, many of them. What do you think from these experiences that we are we're trying to blend social into traditional and traditional into social. What advice would you give to folks that are trying to jump into an industry that possibly could be so traditional? How can they be advocates for this and still keep their jobs?
Well,
I want you to keep your jobs.
Well, I think first you got to get the journalism right first.
Yeah,
that's the priority. I mean, you've got to be a good journalist. And I think the game change that's going on is being a good journalist is becoming also being good at social. It's a complement to the foundation of being good from a good J school that's prepared you to go out there and cover good stories and dig deeply into issues and engage your community. Now you have this chance to also get this feedback and be a little bit more in touch with what people care about and what the stories are. I mean, I get a lot of tips. I mean, it's incredible the stuff that comes, and I funnel those out to the various appropriate places within our news organization, specialty reporters, investigative reporters. We have a consumer on your side kind of approach to our brand is on your side. And so, we become conduits to get that information out to exactly where it needs to go, and it's a great opportunity, but journalism first.
I would probably preach patience a little bit. We were talking before that it's fun to invent something, that it's nice to just completely turn it upside down and do it, but you probably have to be patient enough to sort of glacially evolve. It's probably a smarter way to look at it. That we've seen our students for years go out into TV stations and become the instant expert on something thanks to Gen Class. Many of them will be social media or other online experts when they get to their station because nobody there has taken that on. As long as you let your managers know what you're capable of and keep suggesting ideas, they're not going to do everything that you want to do. I can guarantee that. But you keep picking away a little bit of that, will go in there, and you'll find that you can actually bring some new ideas and feel some pride of ownership when those happen at the station.
And I think me, personally, I'm on the other end of that. I was not what you would call a journalist, so to speak, when I got into news. I was very young, and I was a teenager when I started as an editor, and so I've always been a geek first, I guess. And so it just so happens that in the climate that we're in, the way everything is kind of turned, it's been very good for me because I know a lot of this equipment, and I'd say to anybody who's looking to get into the business, a lot of you younger people know things that people who are at the news stations don't know or may not be as familiar with. So use the skills and talents you have to come in and be valuable to that newsroom, to that brand. Like I think maybe it was Stacy I heard talking on camera who said, you're going to be an expert at some things that other people aren't, and that is your value. I was telling, before you get in, go cover an event. If a major news event is happening in your area, take your iPhone, get a decent camera at the Apple Store or Radio Shack, wherever. Go cover it and put together your own little package, and then tweet the producers. A lot of producers are on Twitter. Yep. Tweet them and say, hey, I saw you guys cover this story on your 10-people show. I did too. Did you check out the story I did?
Yeah, develop a relationship. I mean, Spock and I were just saying, this is such an exciting time for you as you're coming into this business. Very different people coming in because we had to deal with unions and go to really, really small markets to start our tape going. But now you can do it on your own. Develop those relationships now and get to know who's who. It's so easy to know who's in our newsrooms. And develop their relationships through Facebook, through Twitter, and through G+, and make your own tape. Because at the end of the day, like you said, though, you got to have good content. At the end of the day, you got to have a good tape and a link to send them. So that's all at your fingertips.
YouTube is your friend. And you can
do it on your own. YouTube is your friend.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we have a question in the room. Go ahead.
Actually, it's off the chat.
Oh, sure.
A couple of questions circling around. We talk about how it integrates with the newsroom. There's a few questions out there asking for more nuts and bolts on how you use this technology to make your reporting richer. Maybe some examples of how it's built a stronger, deeper, richer view for the audience of the news activity.
I can take that one. For instance, in the aftermath of the Oslo bombing in Norway, we here, a television station in the middle of Missouri, wouldn't have had the ability to get reaction shortly after that event occurred. But we used this technology essentially as a satellite truck. And we went out on Google Plus and found people and confirmed that they had experienced what they had experienced. We brought them into a Hangout for them to then describe to us what they had experienced, not just in a singular soundbite, but in a group conversation. So they had a group conversation about what they had just experienced in Norway, so a world away. So that allowed us to expand the reach of our journalism. For instance, we've had instances where we weren't able to get a live signal out. So in the aftermath of the Branson tornadoes in southwest Missouri that damaged a lot of the country music halls, we had a backpack shot that wasn't able to get a signal out due to some jammed cell signals, but we used our Hangout to bring in someone live during the newscast for them to give us that information. Had we had this technology in the Joplin tornado, for instance, we wouldn't have had to wait for our reporters to get there or for a helicopter to get to Sedalia, wherever it is, and show us the damage. This allows people to have a group conversation in mass. So television stations can open up a Hangout and say, okay, viewers, you're at the riot, you're at the fire, you're at the tornado. We've opened up a Hangout. Join our Hangout from your mobile phone and show us live what you are experiencing. I see that as the future. We are just scratching the surface here as far as using that technology for news and breaking news. But I think in the future, once there's more penetration of Google Plus and markets, you will see more group viewer live shots.
Yeah, and I think another, that's examples inside Google Plus. There are many different social media tools that are out there, and depending on the market and depending on your comforts, being in those spaces and learning how they work and how people use them in the market. I follow stories and issues that have happened months ago, but I follow the conversation on various social tools, and it helps me keep ahead of the story. There's been some pretty terrible situations in our market, and one of them I knew about a vigil before any of this market was discussing it, and I was just following the conversation inside social spaces, public posts on Facebook, mentions on Twitter, and I even found the organizer's phone number on a public Facebook post. I probably didn't realize, and it worked out for me. If you take the time to learn how these tools work, take the time to listen and engage, but listen. These tools are incredible listening tools if you know how to use them.
Well, and some of the concern is, you get these tips and this flow of information that comes in, and the process of being a good journalist and verifying information is really important, but this is also why on the front end, establishing the relationships early and knowing your audience is important, because, for example, a couple of years ago, we had a bank robbery hostage-taking situation, and somebody who had been a follower of mine, who I'd been connected to, who I knew, suddenly tweeted to me, DM'd me privately, and said, my mom's in there. And so we had this incredible information coming in about when it was over. We knew it was over. We had to cage it with our source, with a relative inside us saying that it's over. We're working to confirm this with authorities. We had to really be careful in the way we used it, but we had a distinct advantage on that story in terms of being able to cover it with better information. Recently we had a fire where, the chopper goes down, God forbid that, but was not functioning for the day, and we couldn't get to a fire. And it was an inferno, like the whole apartment building went up. You guys can imagine, I'm sure you guys are in apartments, you're like, oh, can you imagine losing everything? And all these folks at this apartment complex lost everything. We had no flames. And I did a Twitter search, was able to establish finding a picture that was posted 6 minutes before we even started posting about it, being a story, so it wasn't like somebody could manufacture it and matched up the building and everything. It had this awesome picture of an inferno that we wouldn't have had any other way. So Twitter search has been helpful to me. And even live stream recently, we had tornado warnings and danger on a Friday night, and it was like, it increased at 11 o'clock, which is pretty unusual, and was carrying on until 4:30 in the morning. And I was kind of worried about it because I don't have a weather radio, even though I tell people on television to get one all the time. And so I was staying up, and I thought, well, since I'm up, I'll live stream. So I live streamed from my house. The South Carolina Emergency Management Division's headquarters was up, and they have a camera and have very active on Twitter, and they saw me in there, so they came in, and I didn't have a meteorologist with me. I had our iPad app to show them radar, and I had the South Carolina Emergency Management Division in the stream with me, and they were taking viewer questions and giving people advice about, people were like, where would I go? What would I do? And I had 500 people in that live stream. And that was, that's an example of how powerful it is, especially when you have developing, breaking, important moments, and when you have those collective experiences where, like you guys had the storm with the blizzard kind of or snow situations, those kind of weather danger situations are huge in social space. So it's a really fun place to play.
Yeah. And when Joplin happened, our Facebook page was a rolling information source. It was the most powerful and exhausting time, and I ended up helping manage the Facebook recovery page for the first 2 weeks after the tragedy. And these are relationships and opportunities to learn, and why would we want to leave I've said this since probably 2007. Social tools are another scanner that we need to listen to. Newsrooms forever have listened to the police scanner. Why wouldn't we take the time to listen to the people scanners? It's too powerful to miss. And that's why I'm an advocate on so many levels.
And why wouldn't you connect? Why wouldn't you want to connect and be closer to your audience than you already are? I mean, it makes perfect sense that you would make a choice to connect.
We have questions. Oh, do you have a mic, Jamal? Do you need one? All right, go ahead.
Hello. Okay. My question is, with the so-so ratings of U-News over the past, semester or two, do you blame that more so on the concept or just the area? Do you feel like you could take this concept, this show, drop it in a different market, and it would be completely different outcome?
I think it's the problem I outlined before. I think it's it looks different. So I think you'd run into the same problem in every place. You've had some
we've had some
issues with
it too. I think I agree with Stacey. I mean, I think like we were talking before, this balancing act is what it is. And as cool as it seems to start something revolutionary and totally different, to stand out, it doesn't necessarily always pan out.
Well, yeah, and I've said this a lot lately. While we're innovating in the news side, sales, especially in the broadcast world, is not innovating because they don't have to. We need more fear or more motivation on different ways to monetize. And that's, we understand there is a growing audience that wants to interact and be a part of us as news journalists, as people who are sharing content that is important to their community. They're not the same people that are watching TV and buying cars and, the advertisers that are reaching the traditional viewer. So, but if we wait for the sales department's fear, we've missed our opportunity to innovate and reach that future user of broadcast. So.
Change is hard. I think how many of you in here complain, how loudly you complain every time they change Facebook. That's a pretty minor change most of the time. So to get somebody to watch a whole different kind of newscast is a bit fun.
And if I can piggyback that response just a little bit, I think, look, when younger people become heavier consumers of news content, they're going to remember the stations, the brands who are with them, who are doing these things, innovating when they were younger. And I think when they become heavier consumers of the content, they're going to go, oh, I remember so-and-so was doing something really cool, and it was something that really spoke to my generation. So let me go check that station when I want to go look at content. Maybe they're doing something equally cool online. And so I think kind of you're casting out nets. And you're connecting with this generation potentially where they're at. And so I do think that when they become, if there's such thing as traditional news consumers, once they are, I think they'll go searching for those same people who were fishing in their waters, in their pond, back when they maybe were not as heavy consumers of news content.
Right. Rob, you had a question too.
Yeah, actually kind of two questions. The first is really low level, but it's just, that's a big scary URL at the top of that page. How do you let people know in sort of an easy way on your broadcasts how they can get into a Hangout or how they can watch it? How do you link them to that? And then the second one is, of course, I come from a print background, and this seems to make so much sense for broadcast because you're taking something that's already on the air, but how can we use this in newspapers or magazines?
Oh, sure.
I can take a little bit about how do you get into a Hangout. I think I heard what you were saying there. Essentially, you create a Google Plus account. You go to plus.google.com. And you join Hangouts. The way that you build an audience is by joining other Hangouts. A lot of people open up a Hangout and they're like, well, nobody's here. Well, that's because you have to join other Hangouts in order to build your own. I hold a public Hangout at 3:30 every day. Open up your Hangout to the public. It's a little scary at first because you don't know who's going to hop into that Hangout, but the world floods in and you get to meet people from all around the world in that public Hangout that then allows you to then build your contacts or your circles in that respect. So did that answer that question? And I didn't hear your second question.
Well, yeah, I'll give you a little more. If you wanted to watch a Hangout that's a part of our broadcast, we also stream it on our website. Also, Sarah and I'm pretty sure most of the folks that are in this Hangout have a thing called Google Plus Hangouts on Air, where you can broadcast it live on Google Plus and YouTube. So there's an ability to see it on other spaces as well. I know my goal is to have people come to my website, so I want people to watch it there. We have a live chat that goes on underneath it, so if anyone wants to interact, that's another way to do it. But if you go to Sarah's page on Google Plus right now, this is on, and there's people talking below it that naturally happens. And so there's kind of a Google Plus chat happening while watching. And there's so many different places right now where it goes. It would be great if we had one place that would be easier to manage. Why would we want it easy?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, also a new feature within the last week and a half is this on-air Hangout. People who have on-air is also live on YouTube. When you go to the YouTube page to see whatever the scheduled live events are, you are seeing these Hangouts on air. So that will be a very interesting wrinkle to see what TV stations do with that, now that this on-air Hangout is also live on YouTube as well. So you could go to my YouTube channel and see this streaming live on YouTube.
Can I just add that to exactly what Sarah said of the text I put in the window, in that we did test this a couple of days ago, and once it goes into the G+ screen in YouTube and we can use those share buttons, we do know for sure that someone walking down the street can flip open their iPhone or like an Android and actually watch that stream live. And I'm absolutely delighted as a small guy. I don't think some of the bigger ones would be delighted, but I love it. I think it's fantastic. Which, when I will say that having updated my own YouTube logo, that now I can get listed myself along, as I said in there, with BBC Persia and Russia Today and things. So I think that's so cool for me.
Just before South by Southwest, I did a week's worth of Google Plus Hangouts that were live every single day, and we did have a big problem. Like the person asked the question, how do you tell people to go to that URL? He mentioned that's a really long URL. So what I did was I made a custom URL that was off my own domain, and anyone could do this themselves. So I had it stevegarfield.com/G+, G-P-L-U-S, and that sent people to my Google page and my stream, and the top post would be my Google Hangout. So I just kept posting out on Twitter and on Facebook and all my social media outposts, stevegarfield.com/G+, and then when they got there, they could find it easily. So that's the answer on how to send people to this really long URL.
That's a great idea. There's also, if you don't have your own website and you're a student there, go to plusya.com, P-L-U-S-Y-A, plusya.com. It allows you to create a vanity URL for your Google Plus.
Or Bitly, or there's lots of URL shortening tools. Steve is a wonderful example of you don't have to have a traditional broadcast outlet to have a show, or shows, or nonstop, or anyone can do that. And so the trick is you need the commitment. So if you have a newspaper newsroom that has the commitment to do this, it can happen. I spoke to the New York Press Association earlier this month. Oh my gosh, it's been a long month. But I had small folks working in very small newsrooms that left so excited. They have an opportunity to be as much of a broadcaster as I am. I mean, that is incredible. These tools make it possible for anyone to do this.
Well, and newspapers have already gotten into the video game. I mean, most of the newspapers in my area and around the country are posting plenty of video, going to events, live streaming events. Our Greenville News, I know, does a lot of live streaming events in South Carolina. So this is just another extension of that. It's a logical extension, and especially when you can get your experts or a group of people in there and some audience and have this kind of powerful exchange. And if you can get to the point where you've got the on-air Hangouts and it's recording to YouTube and you've got that embeddable replay option, I mean, that's great too. Great content for the newspapers to build upon.
My kids photobomb Hangouts all the time.
I'm sorry. It's almost time to go to school, so yeah, I'm going to take off in a little bit. This is
Hey, Stephanie, before you take off, can you give some parting words if there is either a newscaster out there or a journalist who is interested in using this technology? I mean, essentially, you are not taking out any other time of your day. You are just doing Hangouts. We all are. During the newscast. Can you talk a little bit about some advice that you would give to either a student watching or another newscaster watching on how this might be able to help them further connect with your audience?
More than it, this has been such a gift and a great tool for me. I was a purist for the longest time, and I resisted any sort of social media. But I agree that you really need to be a journalist first and foremost. Be a good writer. Do all the things that all journalists need to do, and that's your foundation. And don't be discouraged about social media. You want to continue doing this. Everyone's invading now, so I'm going to get quick. You want to be persistent and be a leader in your newsroom, even when the news director, people, or other journalists resist it, because you will see that. I think that it's more work. I think the bottom line is people are afraid of it, and they will resist it. So you want to be a leader in your newsroom and push and really try and establish whether it's Google+, Facebook, any sort of interactivity in your newsroom, and be a leader that way and continue doing that. And for me, I find I have to get off, divorce myself from the computer or the device, and just manage your time a little differently, because it is more work, but it adds so much more to the news gathering process and to connecting with your viewers. And I would just say be persistent in all of that, and be open to learning all of this, because it does make you a better journalist, ultimately. It's time to go to school. Thank you so much, everybody.
Need to go too. Do you guys have any parting words as well?
Yeah, we're just going to go. I just want to echo what Stephanie said, and yeah, just be persistent and keep working at it. This is really, really an exciting time for us. I want to thank Sarah and everyone at KOMU for really spearheading this movement and the presence on G+, for learning from you guys as well. And gone are the days where you just wear one hat. You've got several hats on, and it's fun, exciting, and just do that.
And for me personally, like Dave Chappelle said, I'm somewhat of a habitual dissenter. So buck tradition. Be awesome. Don't let anybody stand in your way. Do your thing. Do it on your own if you have to.
Yeah, I would say, so I go and I talk to a lot of students in colleges in the Boston area, and they can totally own this. It's so new, and like you'd mentioned, they have to be committed, and if they're committed, they don't have to be committed to a series of shows 52 weeks. Like I did a live show that was 1 week, so I committed to do 7 live shows every day at a certain time, and I did it. A friend of mine, John Herman, he does a pop-up game show. He's a friend of mine, he lives up in New Hampshire. He did the Google Plus game show. So it's wide open, and you just have to take the opportunity that's given to you right here, and then you're going to be known as the person, oh, that person knows how to do a Google Hangout. And when you go and interview in a station, they're not going to say, where's your resume? They're going to say, what have you done? And then you can say, I did this, I did that, and then you did it all and show examples. It's so, to me, it seems so simple.
Well, I think, too, you can also step in and fill voids. When you hear from viewers, for example, I get a lot of, well, you don't do enough good news. And so on Friday mornings, because there's a lot of nonprofits and community groups that never make the news, I go to a local coffee bar and I stream a show that really doesn't get a lot of views in terms of live watching, but I just do it because it's fun. And in the process, I record each of these little interactions I have. I start and stop recording and do little segments with the various events and community things that are coming up. And then I post out a blog that has community events on it for the end of the week and gives these groups something embeddable, that's credible, that they can share and push out their event and get some good, I don't do, commercials or anything like that, but if it's a nonprofit, if it's a community event, I try to get the word out and help them. And that way, when I get those criticism calls, I can say, well, over here on my left hand, I'm doing this. And so it helps me to be able to meet a need in the community, satisfy viewers, and answer them to a complaint that we get pretty frequently.
Speaking of students, I know we have some who have some research to share with us. I don't know if we're ready for them at this point or not, but
yeah, you'd like to?
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah, sure. Claire, come on down.
Good. I was just going to say, I'm going to have to bug out because we've got our new newscast, but thank you, everyone. I don't have all the answers, certainly not, but we are enjoying it, experimenting in this space with our little magic carpet that takes us around the world in that respect. So it's good to see all of you in the Hangout. I'm going to head back into the newsroom. And Amy, Jen, Stacey, Mike, Steve, thank you again for sharing your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Sarah.
All right, see you later. High five.
Great show.
High five. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.